In this chapter, we will cover the reasons behind economic interdependence, the mechanics of how trade benefits all parties, and define the concepts of absolute and comparative advantage. Consider the economic consensus on trade with China. Most economists agree that trade allows nations to purchase goods that are produced more efficiently elsewhere, ultimately benefiting consumers. Interdependence means relying on others for the goods and services we use daily. This specialization and subsequent trade reflect a core economic principle: trade can make everyone better off. To illustrate these concepts, we will use a simplified example involving two countries, the US and Japan, and two goods, airplanes and soybeans. We will analyze production and consumption with and without trade. For our example, the US economy has 50,000 labor hours available. It produces airplanes and soybeans, with production requirements of 500 hours per airplane and 10 hours per ton of soybeans. This table outlines the US production possibilities based on labor allocation. By distributing hours between airplanes and soybeans, we can identify various production points. The US production possibilities frontier, or PPF, visualizes these trade-offs. The US can produce 100 airplanes, 5,000 tons of soybeans, or any efficient combination along the line. Without trade, a country must consume exactly what it produces. If the US allocates half its labor to each good, it reaches point C1, consuming 50 airplanes and 2,500 tons of soybeans. Now, let's build a PPF for Japan. With 30,000 labor hours, producing one airplane takes 625 hours, and 1 ton of soybeans takes 25 hours. Let's map this on a graph. Based on Japan's labor resources, its maximum production is 48 airplanes or 1,200 tons of soybeans. Any point on the blue line represents an efficient production combination for Japan. If Japan, like the US, uses half of its labor for each good, it operates at point C1. This results in the production and consumption of 24 airplanes and 600 tons of soybeans. Comparing these points, we see the baseline consumption without trade. To understand the gains from trade, we must examine how production levels change when countries specialize. Let's consider new production points under trade. If the US produces 3,500 tons of soybeans, how many airplanes can it produce with its remaining labor? And for Japan, if it produces 48 airplanes, what are its soybean output levels? For the US, 3,500 tons of soybeans requires 35,000 labor hours. This leaves 15,000 hours, which can produce 30 airplanes. This defines point P2 on the US production frontier. Now, consider Japan's production when they can trade. By allocating all 30,000 labor hours to airplane production, Japan can produce 48 airplanes. This means they would produce 0 tons of soybean. To understand how trade functions, we must define imports and exports. Imports are goods produced abroad and sold domestically, while exports are goods produced domestically and sold abroad. Let's explore consumption under trade, where countries exchange 22 airplanes for 880 tons of soybeans. We'll examine how this trade impacts consumption possibilities for both the US and Japan. The US consumes the goods it produces plus its imports, minus its exports. By exporting 880 tons of soybeans and importing 22 airplanes, the US reaches point C2, consuming 52 airplanes and 2,620 tons of soybeans. Japan's consumption also improves with trade. After exporting 22 airplanes and importing 880 tons of soybeans, Japan is able to consume 26 airplanes and 880 tons of soybeans, moving beyond its initial production possibilities. Trade makes both countries better off by allowing them to consume more than they could produce on their own. This effectively expands the consumption frontier for both the US and Japan. Why do these gains occur? It begins with absolute advantage, defined as the ability to produce a good using fewer inputs than another producer. The US holds an absolute advantage in both soybeans and airplanes. Even when one country has an absolute advantage in both goods, trade remains mutually beneficial. The key lies in comparative advantage, specializing in goods produced at the lowest opportunity cost. Beyond absolute input costs, we must measure the cost of a good through opportunity cost, which represents the amount of one good that must be given up to produce another. Comparative advantage is the ability to produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another producer. By specializing according to this principle, overall production and consumption efficiency increase. Let's calculate the opportunity costs for both countries. For the US, producing one airplane costs 50 tons of soybeans. For Japan, Producing one airplane costs only 25 tons of soybeans. Similarly, we find the opportunity cost for soybeans. In the US, 1 ton of soybeans costs 0.02 airplanes, while in Japan, 1 ton of soybeans costs 0.04 airplanes. Japan has a comparative advantage in airplanes, while the US has a comparative advantage in soybeans. This demonstrates that a country doesn't need an absolute advantage to benefit from trade. By specializing based on comparative advantage, the world's total economic pie grows larger. This specialization allows all trading countries to increase their total production and consumption. Finally, the price of trade must fall between the two countries' opportunity costs. In our example, the price of 40 tons of soybeans per airplane benefits both, as it falls between Japan's 25 and the US's 50. Let's apply these concepts with an interactive example featuring Argentina and Brazil. Each country has 10,000 labor hours per month. We are given specific labor requirements for producing coffee and wine in each country. Based on these numbers, which country holds an absolute advantage in coffee, and who has a comparative advantage in wine? Brazil holds the absolute advantage in coffee production, as it requires fewer labor hours per pound. Argentina holds the comparative advantage in wine, because its opportunity cost, giving up 2 pounds of coffee for a bottle of wine, is lower than Brazil's cost of 5 pounds of coffee per bottle. We often discuss trade policy, such as trade between China and the United States. While economists generally agree that trade makes most citizens better off, it is important to acknowledge that free trade can create distinct winners and losers, particularly among those in competing domestic industries. Consider this scenario. A candidate proposes tariffs on foreign steel to boost domestic production. Would this make the U.S. better off overall? While specific workers and producers in the steel industry may gain, the country as a whole loses the benefits of comparative advantage, and consumers face higher prices. To summarize, interdependence and trade allow everyone to enjoy a greater variety of goods. Remember the distinction. Absolute advantage relates to input efficiency, while comparative advantage relates to lower opportunity costs, which is the true driver of the gains from trade. Ultimately, trade makes everyone better off by enabling specialization. This principle applies to individuals and nations alike, and it remains a foundational argument for economists advocating for free trade in the global market.